So pretty much Far Cry 5 was one of the best games of 2018 so far, but however the game had a certain defaults between the active gameplay being very dull and boring, but the active true dialogue including story was outstanding. So these are the good and bad things of Far Cry 5, and I'd like to give a good shout out to my good friend Benjamin. Me and him recently just did a Fortnite video. I'll leave the video in the description below. If it wasn't for him, I would not be inspired to still be doing YouTube, so please go show him some love the way how you guys do. And yeah, let's get into the best and bad things of Far Cry 5. The first thing we want to get into is actually the opening cutscene of Far Cry 5. Now, keep in mind, this is not actually live action, it is actually the modern graphics of this game, which is pretty outstanding because how realistic it felt. It felt like true love and emotion went to the graphics with Ubisoft, and I didn't feel any type of boredom when I was watching this. Now, back in the day when I was criticizing Fallout 4 for having a great opening, I firmly take that back because I felt like Far Cry 5 didn't much fancy. So yeah, the main opening of this game is very highly sophisticated when it comes to the graphics, including atmosphere. It actually properly introduced some of the main characters that would help you bring down the gang. Now of course, this cutscene of the opening of the game actually introduces Joseph Seed, obviously considering he's on the cover of the game. And of course, it actually means he's a force to be reckoned with, how he actually gouged a man's eyes out after finding he's a traitor. This is actually proving how strong he is, including how threatening, making it a bit more of a default for you to actually bring him and the cult down.
But I will make them see.
So before we get into the more great stuff in this game, let's get into the first of the bad stuff. That's perfectly why the gameplay is actually clustered, like I said, boring. This is partially because the guns in this game are very dull and they functionally don't work properly. For example, pretty much half of the way of these guns have way too high recoil and it's very difficult to aim your shots with the crosshairs. So what you can actually say about these guns are almost useless, but hey, what are you going to do to get progress into this game? Now the pistols themselves are pretty decent and you can get to a farther length of the game with just the pistols. So if I were you guys, stick with the pistol as much as you can because it could help you in a very heavy fight. Now of course, the guns have redeeming cores, so the look of the guns look way too real, especially with these amazing graphics, and of course the sound of the guns sound pretty amazing, so you won't be bored with it, and of course the guns feel more realistic than they need to be, so it was pretty nice of Ubisoft to make it a bit interesting. But of course, the attachments on the weapons don't even barely work at all, especially with the crosshairs with the sights. The sights are okay, but you can't call them Grandmaster Piece how Call of Duty proceeds them. And of course, silencers in this game barely work at all. Yes, you can do the game stealthily with a bow and arrow, but that's pretty much it. Even snipers equipped with a silencer, enemies can hear it far away across the map, especially when it's daytime. So stealth in this game isn't really a Grandmaster Piece like in Far Cry 3, which is actually very disappointing because that made the game all fun. And of course, the other bad thing about this is the fact that they took out something that has been introduced in 2 Far Cry games, and that's basically the honey mechanic. Now, if any of you have not played Far Cry 3 or 4, the honey mechanic was basically too simple. You would use these certain skins from rarity animals that would actually use their proper skin tree to upgrade your skill tree, be able to actually hold more grenades, health, basically all the above when it comes to helping you out in the wild. And of course, you hunting for this rarity of the animals with their skins gave you an excuse to explore the open world. If you wanted to actually make the game more easier for yourself, you were forced to actually explore and hunt these animals like a hunting game in sorts. So it actually gave it a natural, clear development how it actually is more than just a first-person shooter. So I did like how Ubisoft took the time and effort to make Far Cry 3 all fun with the honey mechanic, but it was just a shame they couldn't keep it in Far Cry 5. Yes, of course, you could still hunt in the game, but there's really no need to. It was just an excuse for you to actually get money. But of course, like I said about the guns, most of the guns in Far Cry don't even do that maximum damage, and of course the recoil is atrocious. So if anything, you're just better off to sticking with the pistols or even with a bow and arrow. So I'm pretty sure the gameplay wise is very disappointed by Far Cry 5 standards, but however, like I said, it has redeeming cores when it comes to the actors' performances. Now with certain other games it could be perfect, but of course some active companions could be flat out useless, but not the case with Far Cry 5. This is partially because Far Cry 5 made all the visual companions very creative, including backstory and character development. My favorite is actually the pirate, after coming in 2 generations of fighting in the military, and of course he's fighting in his own war, including with a family on the way. So it is pretty interesting by all standards, and of course he's my favorite companion out of anybody else, but that's not to say all of them are actually boring. Now, of course, all the active companions have certain perks, and of course the pilot does airstrikes. But that's not only it. If he can't get a high ground in the enemy if there are two behind cover, he can actually get on land and actually help you to fight with an assault rifle. So it is pretty amazing by Ubisoft not to actually make all the companions useless. And speaking of good companions, let me tell you, the Archer is pretty much one of the most overpowered companions you can get in all Far Cry 5. This is partially because she is actually a stealth companion, and not only this, she could one-shot pretty much animals and people as well. So you could probably say, like I said, overpowered as all hell. Now, this guy isn't typically my favorite companion out of all of them, but mostly partially because he brings the active comedy into the game and all in general. Between his considerate dialogue, he actually has appeared in 2 Far Cry games, Far Cry 3 and Far Cry 4. And let me tell you, his active dialogue when he's fighting in the battlefield is pretty priceless.
Turn some wheels into scrap metal, you point, and I'll shoot, man. Point, shoot. Point, shoot, point, shoot, point, shoot, point, shoot. Fuck, I love shooting things, man. Come on, you know I do. I got a passion for it. It lives in my balls and it bubbles up to my gut.
Now, of course, you don't like explosives, too fast and quick, but what if you actually feel about pyrotechnics? Well, this guy has you covered, boy. This guy actually brings a natural true feel to the open world, how he can actually set anything on fire, true cars, true people, true nature, including giving you the satisfying feel when you see everything being torched. So this could be very good for any of you firebugs out there. But keep in mind, there's pretty more active companions out there going to help you into any time. The dog can actually help you find people more easier. The archer can actually get to long range, including the sniper. All of them can satisfy your needs and help you in a proper, natural way, including they can revive you if you go down. So yeah, by all means, use the companions as much as you can, because he can help you in pretty much in any fight you get into. And if you're playing the game on the hardest difficulty, they have your back at all times. So yeah, the active companions in this game, you would not be bored with it, and that's a promise. Now we have getting over the hedge with the gameplay. What do we think about the active dialogue and who brings the best performance in all Far Cry 5? Well, that's properly simple, and that is actually Joseph Seed, known as Greg Brick. Now, Greg Brick brings an outstanding performance as Joseph Seed, how he actually is supposed to be a preacher, and any other word that comes out of his mouth actually feels like emotional, but actually religious at sometimes. Bringing an outstanding performance, including an interesting character development with Joseph.
There they are, the locusts in our garden. See, they've come for me. They've come to take me away from you. They've come to destroy all that we've built.
Hold on, do not touch that servant! Hold on and don't stand down! Stand down! Everyone calm down!
Now, you don't have to rely on Joseph to bring the good performance. You can actually rely on also his siblings, known as the Heralds. And of course, out of all of them, my favorite is actually John. Now, the reason John is probably my favorite out of all of them because it's interesting character development including backstory. Now, of course, John was actually born in the middle of the family. That was at the time when they were splitting apart. So it wasn't the perfect time when he actually was born because everything was dysfunctional up until then. Now, as anybody who has played Far Cry 5 or done any research on the game, you will probably know John is obsessed with the word yes. This is partially because the word yes can open a trail of doors right in front of you. A door could lead you to a life of salvation and peace, or a world of self-destruction and torture, and John wants to show you each of these doors and see what he can actually do. Now, if he sees you going to a life of self-destruction, he would do anything he can to stop you, and that means killing you as well. But of course, when he sees you actually join the Eden's Gate of you confessing your sins, he'll be more than happy to show you the way.
This is lesson number 1. Yes. Yes. You're not gonna regret this. I promise.
Massive spoiler right here in the main game of Far Cry 5, so you have been warned. Now, once you've been captured by John, including your friends, he starts writing things on your chest. And what does it write? Well, of course, he writes down the word wrath. Now, as anybody knows, anybody has to confess their sins to actually confront it. Once you confront your sins, you either get better or you even become worse. And of course, John wants to take the risk to see what can happen, because of course, he actually doesn't like the deputy ruin all of their progress. So he wants to do anything he can to actually stop them, even if it means breaking Joseph's rules. In fact, at one point, he actually tried to drown you.
You mock the cleansing, John.
No, Joseph.
You have to love them, John. Do not let your sin prevent that.
Now, if you paid attention that closely where John was about to kill you and you see Joseph step ahead, that probably means Joseph knows what his brother is, but of course he's trying his very best to contain his sins. And that's partially because why is John my favorite? He's a ticking time bomb, and if it wasn't for Joseph, he would have gone on a mass killing spree. Now, the way how they ended off John was actually very disappointing. By killing him by your own hands, you actually see a shell of a man being in denial of what you think of Joseph. Many people call him crazy, but he's still, even to his deathbed, defending him at all times. But they could have done it a bit better. They could have done an emotional, natural feel to it. But unfortunately, Ubisoft didn't have the proper writing to actually end off the character perfectly. But of course, Joseph Seed actually talks about his brother John in a nice and functional way to even bring it a bit more emotional. So at least there was light into the end of this.
My brother John was loved by few, feared by many, misunderstood by all, except me. John was not born a monster. He was just a child when our family was torn apart.
Now, one of my favorite character developments, including outstanding and beautiful atmosphere in a video game, is actually coming to Fate's World. Now, of course, Fate's World is actually pretty beautiful in its own natural way with a clear atmosphere, but what about the main dialogue, including character development? Well, I could safely say the main dialogue that has been said by Fate makes sense. Though she doesn't preach like Joseph, she seems like a normal teenage girl who's actually trying to find the light like the rest of the others. Now, of course, her main backstory isn't too creative, have you heard it plenty of times in movies and video games. But of course, it has been saved by, like I said, the atmosphere, including outstanding dialogue between the actress. So like I said, you won't be bored when you actually get to Fate.
She took to a needle for help. She was all alone. She wanted to die. And then she met the Father. He gave her hope and confidence. The Father showed her how special she was. She was full of love and life.
Now, don't let that natural scene trick you. As anybody knows, Fate is a force to be reckoned with. In fact, she doesn't like it when she doesn't get her own way.
Wanted without consequences? I've been reasonable, I've been fair. But you were just so selfish. You forced someone to leave that didn't want to go. Their blood is on your hands.
And when their blood is on your hands,
We'll see how heroic you feel.
see how heroic you feel.
What are you doing?
Now, of course, that was pretty much of a WTF moment, but why did that guy shoot him? Well, as anybody knows, when that guy actually made it into Fate's world for the first time, it felt like heaven on earth. How he actually confesses to you that his whole life has been nothing but stress and hell.
Told we can be anything, right? A famous singer, Hall of Famer, movie star. We're all gonna be a success, Rook. But no, that's just not true. We live mundane lives. Come on, when's the last time you did something that wasn't required? Demanded? Nah, Rook. We don't live our lives. We live theirs. If that is real life, then what is the point? This place gave me the chance to become something I thought I could never be. Happy.
So of course, you taking him out of the one place he called home, he actually starts to get angry, and the one thing he ever wanted to actually go back. So it actually goes to show, when someone actually be shown to the gates of heaven and you take them out, they start to regret even staying on the normal earth. So it actually makes sense, and I'm pretty sure Ubisoft put in a natural and clear fashion what it would happen if you do something like that.
They're inside!
I told you. I didn't want to leave.
Now, I know what you're thinking, it kinda is a bit messed up, but if you like it or not, this can happen in real life at any time. So if anybody can get into the drone of sanity seeing the gates of heaven, you can't really blame them. It was paradise in front of them and you took them away. So it was actually a beautiful natural scene to me, so pretty much of a masterpiece at some point, how it sends a natural and true message, including in clever writing skills. So if I were you guys, I'd say don't skip any of these cutscenes you go into Fate's world, because it actually is pretty beautiful. And of course, the real sad part of all Far Cry series, the death of Fate. Now of course, with the interesting atmosphere and beautiful music in the background, it nails it out of the park and making it feel like a movie scene and such. How Fate regrets most of the things she's done in the past, including letting Joseph in her life. Of course, the death of Fate, unlike John, is pretty emotional. How I felt true attachment to the character and I felt pretty sad. I felt like I could have actually helped her. But of course, Ubisoft being the assholes they are, they had to make you kill her. But it quite makes sense too. The amount of torture that Joseph made her go through actually building immunity to the Blitz by her being pumped up with drugs, it actually makes sense how she wants to find peace on salvation. So that only way to happen, she wants to die. So it was actually a masterpiece in my own opinion.
And then you'll choose. And if you don't listen to him, he'll be right.
Guys, keep in mind, I would not be talking about Jacob considering I actually made a video on him quite a while back. I'll leave the video in the description below. Anyway, let's talk about the one and final thing I have to say about Far Cry 5. And that is the ending. Yes, the natural true ending when you decide to fight Joseph is pretty a masterpiece in my own opinion. Seeing once Joseph being defeated right in front of you, but of course, like Joseph, he had a backup plan all along.
It is finished, child.
Oh my god! Sing great.
Now, of course, you have to be able to get to the bunker before the whole county burns up to the bits, which is one of the most saddest parts. Seeing this once flat and amazing atmosphere, including Green World, all being destroyed by one explosion is pretty devastating by old standards, including it looks like the gates of hell is open, and it kind of does look like the apocalypse if you put the natural true feel to it. And of course, Joseph starts to actually preach for you to join Eden's Gate, seeing the world being built right in front of him, this being the Noah story from the Bible. And of course, you have no choice to listen to him, considering it's you and him down here. So it was actually a masterpiece ending by old standards, considering one time the hero did not win, rather than Joseph, him actually calling it all along. So guys, please take the time and effort you can to play Far Cry 5. It really is a masterpiece when it comes to the story, and I'm really hoping you guys can actually enjoy it as much as I did. I'm Surefire Bloom, and I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.